right, today we're joined with Kayla. Kayla, so you've obviously had a very interesting upbringing, being homeschooled. Not only homeschooled, but your father was a pastor, and your mother, was she just a stay-at-home mom, or what was her kind of deal?
Yeah, so once I was born, she kind of became a stay-at-home mom, but she did a lot of stuff on the side. She did a lot of substitute teaching.
And she was like, was she your guys' main teacher for you and your sister?
Yeah.
Did you have one younger sister? Do you have any other siblings?
Nope, just my sister. She's 2 years younger.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Um,
Yeah, so obviously
Here's your testimony.
you had a different background than most growing up. You're PK, which means a pastor's kid, and you're also homeschooled. So how did those two things kind of shape who you are and like shape your faith? Because obviously you don't have a lot of outside influences from the world, but then also just kind of the added pressures of being a pastor's kid. How did that kind of shape your early adolescent life?
Yeah, I feel like, it obviously did have a big impact on my life, and who I am today and how I got to where I am today. I think oftentimes when people think about homeschool, they often just think that you're just at home doing nothing or like playing video games. Or you kind of think of like even like the Amish, of just like you're just learning how to like cook and clean and be the perfect wife. And that was not, well, I do believe that there's some of that out there in the homeschool worlds. That was not my homeschool experience at all. I would actually say that most of the education that I had was more difficult, just because my mom is a super smart person. And so she found like the best quality education for homeschoolers out there, and used a lot of it on us. And even on like the standardized tests, I'd always do really well. And so I'm really thankful for my mom for like pushing me in those areas, to succeed in that way. But I think with that came just a huge focus on education for me, and academics and getting good grades. Even though like I never got a report card or anything, obviously my mom would still grade all of my work, and those grades were really important to me. I think with pastor's kid, being a pastor's kid on top of that, just added a lot. I was a pastor's kid at a very small church, and so it's not like a big church experience that some of you might be from, where chances are you don't even know who the pastor's kids are, or maybe you'll see them in the lobby for a couple minutes. I went to a church with 50. It started out with 30 people, when I first started going there, and by the time I left, it was around 50 people. Um, and it was just a very interesting experience because it was just people were always kind of looking at me and my sister. We were also the only kids in the church for most of that time, and so literally all eyes are on us. They say that it's like living in a fishbowl. That's what they say about like pastors' kids at small churches, um, and that's really true. Where it's just everyone's looking at you and everyone has an opinion on what you should wear, what you shouldn't wear, how you should act, how you shouldn't act. And so it definitely created a lot of, I wouldn't say anxiety, but a lot of pressure on me to act a certain way and live a certain way. And just always feeling like no matter what I did, it wasn't enough.
that's tough,
Yeah,
but
so
that's good.
I didn't actually become a pastor's kid until I was 9. That's
Okay.
when my dad became a pastor. And so before that, my family went to a church around 30 minutes away from the church that we ended up going to, where my dad got his job. And through that church, I made a lot of my friends. I was also involved in piano. And so I knew a lot of people through piano lessons. I was super involved in dance. And so I had a lot of friends in dance classes. And honestly, a lot of those friends were the same from like church, piano, and dance. But yeah, because I didn't move super far, it was only 30 minutes. Obviously, I saw my friends less because I didn't see them at church every Sunday. We didn't live as close to each other. So it was harder to do, at that age, like play dates or hangouts or whatever. Um, but yeah, I still
Totally.
kept those friends that I had from a very young age.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because, like, for me, being homeschooled, that was why I didn't like homeschooling because I really didn't really hang out with anyone, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So it was just more isolating for me. So then when I did get out to high school, it was, I just enjoyed it a little more just because of the social aspect of it.
Yeah,
But
I think my parents did a good job of making sure that I kept in, community.
That's good.
And even though, like, obviously I didn't do group sports in a sense,
Mm.
I was still in like a group activity in dance,
Nice.
especially.
That's good.
Yeah.
So would you say you're not athletic?
Wow.
Whoa. Yeah.
I
Bang,
would
bang.
say that athleticism does not come naturally to me. I didn't play basketball or volleyball because there were two of us in the school, and so oftentimes,
You and your sister didn't like play tag?
no, we played Just Dance. That was our PE.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Or yeah, then
That's
we'd go to
fun,
dance
though.
class.
I mean, I'd honestly consider homeschooling my kids if I had the time, just because, yeah, public school is crazy.
You'd be a great homeschooling mom.
Thank you. Yeah, so, anyways, where did, obviously, faith was probably very impactful in your life. Did it feel more forced to you as a kid, though, because you're a pastor's kid and everybody's watching you and there's all these expectations? Did you feel like when you were a kid then, like your relationship with God was real?
Yeah, you know, I think the age that I became a pastor's kid was interesting. I had already given my life to Jesus. I'd given it when I was 4 years old. And so I'd already kind of taken that first step. And for me, it was all very real from a young age. Obviously, everyone who comes to Jesus as a kid really has to go through that time where their faith becomes their own. And I did have to go through that, like throughout college, of like really realizing what did I believe, what did I fully believe about God. But for me, from a young age, like I never had any doubt. And so I was 4 years old when I gave my life to Jesus. I was 7 when I got baptized. And for me, all of that it was self-driven. And even my mom will say that, of like, I was the one who was like, Mom, I want to give my life to Jesus. Like, Mom, I want to be baptized. And it was never like her trying to push me into it. It was very much me on my own wanting to do that. And so even though I did become a pastor's kid and that did have an impact on me and on my faith in God, it was already such a core part of who I was that there was never like this crisis of faith or anything like that.
Wow. Was there anything that ever like tried your faith? Because you said obviously college.
Yeah, I do think that when I went to college, there was that aspect of like getting new perspectives that I hadn't had before. I was thankful, or I was fortunate enough to go to a Christian school, a Christian college. And so I was still kind of in that Christian world. But even with that, just because someone goes to a Christian school doesn't mean they're Christian. And there are lots of different viewpoints posed to me as well. And so that was kind of a time for me to not doubt, but really solidify. Like, what is it that I believe? What is tied to my parents and like kind of the opinions they had that kind of became fact to me, and what is actually true, like this is straight out of the Bible. Because I think when you're raised in the church, when you're raised in a Christian family, there can sometimes be those things that almost feel like part of your faith to you because your parents talk about them so much, and it's like, okay, wait, is this actually like in the Bible, or is this just something that was of value in my house? And is this a value to me? If it's not in the Bible, is it still a value to me, or is it something where I kind of want to branch out a little bit and create my own path?
Do you have some examples of those?
Yeah, you know, I think, and this is nothing against my family, it's just something that I realized a lot as I went into college, of just, I think, oftentimes, especially in the United States, politics can kind of become that like God and politics. And while I'm not saying that's how my parents operated in their life, which I don't believe it was, that was something that was talked about so much that it became like part, like almost not at the same level of God, but definitely something that was prioritized in our house. And so when I went away to college and was like able to vote for the first time and do all of that, I kind of had to have those moments of like, okay, wait, like is having a specific political party, like, is that what makes you a Christian? And it's like, it's not. But it was kind of that like, okay, when it comes to different political stances, when it comes to different things in politics, is what my parents believed, is that straight out of the Bible, or was that their opinion? And so I kind of had to go to the Bible when it came to voting and political beliefs and things like that to see like where's like the gray area and where's the like, okay, like the Bible is black and white about this, like I'm gonna vote a certain way because of what I believe about the Bible.
Gotcha. I think that's probably the best part about college, done right, is like obviously like that's when you finally really do like live on your own, or you really like. I mean, Reggie and I didn't. Oh wait, no, you did. I didn't.
I did a little bit.
But I mean, it forces you to like really. You have to think for yourself. Like you really are like the world sees you as an adult, which is crazy. But it's like you make all your own decisions. You're responsible for all your own actions. But it's like that's when you really, you become your own person. I mean, granted, it takes you many years to really solidify that. But what were some of the other like kind of key factors that really kind of like shaped who you are today and like the faith you have in God?
Yeah, I think a lot of it actually has to start before like even becoming a pastor's kid, even any of that stuff. Growing up in those super early years.
I'll get the canvas ready.
Thank you. Yes, she's gonna draw a picture for you.
Live action.
So yes, like I said, I lived with my mom and my dad and my younger sister. She's 2 years younger. And from the outside, we were kind of that perfect Christian family. Like, that family of four shows up at church every single time. Kids are involved in every single kids ministry thing. Like, if the door's open, we're there. And it's not like that faith wasn't real. That faith was real. But there was a lot hiding beneath the surface that just the world never really saw. And I think there are two big aspects to that. First off, Sarah, if you're out there, I love you so much. She just was a handful.
Would she admit that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she was a handful. She was a troublemaker, very much so. And so she kind of caused some chaos in the house sometimes. And the bigger thing was that on the outside, like my dad totally had that persona of kind of like being that perfect dad, having that perfect family. But the truth was that he was dealing with a secret addiction to drugs and alcohol. And so he was kind of keeping it to himself. He was trying to hide it from even my mom and definitely from me and Sarah at a young age. And so there was just kind of a lot going on beneath the surface that no one really saw. And as my dad started doing a worse and worse job of keeping his secret, there's just a growing tension in the house, especially with the fact that we were just there all day, every day. There's no like outside, no going to school all day and then coming back. And then it all kind of came to a head when I was, I believe, 7. And my dad lost his job because of his addiction. And I still remember the day that he came home from work early, but it kind of just is a difficult time for my family, of just kind of figuring out what the fallout was with my mom being a stay-at-home mom. He was the primary provider, and now he didn't have his job. He was a nurse, and so he made good money. And it's just like, okay, what do we do now? Where do we go from this? And so my dad, pretty quickly, it was like the wake-up call that he needed, thankfully. And so he got involved with Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, and he got clean and sober, which I'm very thankful for, and he still is to this day. And so that in and of itself is its own like God's story of redemption in his life.
We want to hear yours though, Kay. That we're kind of here for.
Yes, sorry. But literally a year later, like all this came down, and then a year later it was like, oh, my dad got a job as a pastor.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, like kind of like a
amazing.
whiplash. Yeah, a whiplash moment of like, whoa, okay, like.
Was it through that experience that he had that he decided he wanted to become a pastor then?
Yeah. I
Wow.
honestly don't know fully. I think that was a big part of it. But I kind of felt like this, like, whoa, like I just found out that my dad was an addict, and now it's like he's a pastor. Like that feels so fast and crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, and he ended up stepping into that new role. But he still had a lot of shame that he was carrying from that whole experience, and from his past. He has his own crazy past. And there's a lot of anger there too. And so I think from a young age, I kind of took on this mindset as like the oldest daughter, which is definitely, like people say what they want to about the eldest daughters, but oftentimes we kind of become like the second moms or whatever. And from a very young age, it's like I was just talking to my mom about this a few months ago, where it's like she never put that pressure on me myself, but I did. Of like, I looked at our family and I looked at, the kind of mess that my dad was in, and I saw the mess that my sister was making at that time. And even from like 6 years old, I kind of felt this burden to like, okay, if everything else is gonna be crazy, I'm gonna be the one thing that's not. Like, I'm gonna be the one thing that no one has to worry about, that everyone can just be like, oh, well, Kayla, she has it together. Like, she's good. We don't have to worry about her. And I was trying to create some peace for my mom, for me, for the people around me, for my grandparents, of just being like that one thing that they didn't have to worry about. And so I think from just a young age, I kind of took on that pressure, that burden onto myself to be that way. And as I grew up, obviously like becoming a PK didn't help with that. And then obviously having such a focus on grades, it just became like this thing that consumed my life of I have to have the perfect grades. I have to never get in any kind of trouble. I have to do everything the correct way. I was like the biggest rule follower. Like, you guys probably wouldn't have even wanted to be friends with me because I was that girl who was like, wait, we're not supposed to do that. Like, absolutely, like,
Still is to this day. I get to do nothing fun.
oh yeah, for sure.
Kidding. Jokes.
But yeah, I was very much just a rule follower. Grades were so important to me. Like, literally, if I'll get my test back and it'd be below a 96, like, I would just start spiraling. Like, that was the level to which I had to be perfect. And perfect to me meant 100%. Like, anything below that was unacceptable.
And this was all kind of motivated by like a desire to bring peace to your family and like.
Yeah, I think I had that. Yeah, I wanted to bring peace. I wanted to be the one that no one had to worry about. That one, like, almost like shining light in the midst of any darkness. I wanted to be that thing that like everyone could be proud of. And so I pushed myself for that in every way imaginable, of just putting all this pressure on myself that just grew and grew. I think in high school I was just super anxious because I always had that pressure on myself to be perfect. I wanted everyone else to see me like the perfect Christian girl. I tried to do everything perfect at church. I memorized 1,000,000 Bible verses. Not really 1,000,000, it was 1,000, but 1,000 Bible verses. I was Bible quizzing champion for like years running.
It's because you never faced me.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it just was in so many ways this obsession, almost, and it became my whole identity. This need to be perfect, and in the process, I tried to even convince myself that I was perfect. Like, I knew the truth. Wow. I knew that I wasn't perfect, but I was like, well, if I just keep trying, I will be. Like, if I just fix these couple things, if I just get 100% on this test, if I just look a little prettier, if I just take these extra steps, like, then I'll finally be like the perfect Christian girl, the perfect thing that no one has to worry about, that no one has to think twice about, that people can be proud of.
Did you at one time ever think you achieved that?
I wouldn't say that I specifically had that moment where I achieved that, but I think I always felt like I was close.
Okay.
Of like, if I just take this one more step, if I just do this one more thing, then I'll finally have reached perfection. Wow. Yeah, and I knew the truth. I knew the fact that the Bible says that we're all sinners and that we all fall short, and that we are all in need of Jesus. We're all in need of a Savior. But I think even from a young age, I let my pride get in the way. And I just convinced myself, like, oh yeah, that's for everybody else. Like, no, like, I can do this. And my faith almost became about me instead of really being about Jesus, who it should be about.
Wow. I think that's a easy thing to get caught up in, though, if you're raised in that environment, like small church, because that's kind of what everyone's striving for. And then there's kind of a just pressure created around that to just drive you to the point where you don't want to look bad in front of anyone, you know. And then that just leads to, at least I have experienced a little bit. I've never really, I was like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna be perfect. I just accepted that. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not worth it. I was too lazy. But that's
It's because you're the youngest child.
I,
Like, I think it'd be interesting to like take a study on like kids who like have a broken home, when there's just like not necessarily like an absent parent, but like when there is like that lack thereof. You know, even if it's for a little bit of time, especially when kids are young. I've said this before, but it's like when your parents are divorced, like at least for me being the older sibling for like my brother, I felt like I had to play the role of the other parent when I was at a different house. So if it was like I was at my mom's, I had to play like the authority. But if I was at my dad's, I had to be like maternal figure of like cleaning up after my brother, making sure he's still doing everything. And it was like they didn't necessarily put that pressure on me, but it's like homes were meant to have, you know, a mom and a dad. Like that's how families were supposed to be biblically. And I think there's so many things that go wrong when it falls out of it. But like for me too, like there was always that pressure to perform. And it was like it was never put on me, but it was like I felt like it was an unsaid expectation that I had to hit. And it was like my dad always like I was always like, go to college. Like you need to go to college, otherwise like you're not gonna have a good life. Like you're gonna be stuck doing like crappy jobs, like working at McDonald's or like just anything like that. And like so, which I think it's a good thing to have a parental figure pushing you to do better. But I think when there's a lack of love to support that pressure, that's where at least for me fear began to take its place. And that's where like I can totally relate to wanting to be perfect, because it's the fear if I don't meet this metric, like you said, like for you and your grades, like you felt like you were getting close because like the metrics for you in your world were grades, memorizing Bible verses, you know, following all the rules. And you're like, okay, if I can check these boxes off, like I'm so close to perfect. Like I'm not failing. Like for me, like, oh gosh, grades were probably one for me. Having a plan for what I was going to do for my life was probably like the biggest one that I just could never crack.
Yeah.
And it would make me spiral because I was
me
like,
too.
I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life. And I was like, I know I have to do all these things and I'm doing all these things that should give me that end result, but I have no idea what I want to do with my life. And so like, that's why I was just like, I'm going to college. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my degree, but I was like, I know I need to go to college because like the opposite end of not going to college is working at McDonald's for the rest of my life. And like, that's something my dad like was like, always like, you got to go to college. And so, not that that's a bad thing. I'm so glad I went to college.
McDonald's workers.
And any McDonald's workers out there. But going back to my main point, it's like when you have that lack of love to support, you know, the pressure that's being put on you, or you feel like you're getting put on, like that's when you get fixated and like fear will take its place. And it's like, I have to succeed. I have to perform in these areas. Or otherwise, like, you know, I'm just going to be another burden to my family. And like, I don't want that to happen. And it's like, it's crazy the amount of unset expectations we'll put on ourselves as kids that will completely dictate. And I mean, we just don't even talk about it. It's just like older children thing.
Yeah. And I do want to say, like, I did have plenty of love and support in my house growing up. And I honestly don't fully know why, like, I became this little perfectionism monster that I became. Of just, there's just always this internal pressure and this desire to just like make everybody proud. And I was just like, okay, I'll finally be able to do that. Like if I do this, I'll finally be able to do that if I do this. And yeah, just like wanting to be that thing that almost people were like, wow, like look at her. Like, whoa.
So this is going to be weird to say, but when I first met you, I didn't think you were real. Like it was very strange because I thought, I'm like, you were too happy and just like too encouraging all the time. And I'm like, this isn't a person. It's, you know, there's no way. And then it was like, you are able to sustain that. And then I'm like, oh, this is who Kay is. This is crazy. I'd never met a person like you, to say that at the least. But also, that was, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. And since then, though, I feel like you've been able to be more vulnerable, if that makes sense. Because do you feel like it was hard for you to be vulnerable, like trying to achieve such a high level of perfectionism?
Oh my gosh, so draining. I was exhausted trying to pull this off. I remember in college, I was running myself into the ground because I was in full-time school. I was actually taking more than full-time units. I was taking 21 units most semesters.
Did you
I
feel like that was a part of your perfectionist too?
Oh
as you
yeah,
had to do
I
more?
told everybody ever that I was taking 21 units because I wanted them to know how great I was. Come on. And so I was taking these 21 units.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think I've.
Yeah.
I was working full time in I had two separate jobs that added up to full time. I was involved in student leadership. I was on multiple scholarships. I kept a 4.0 GPA. And I was in choir. I did theater. Like, I had so much going on in my life. I went to church. I served at my church. I was serving in kids ministry. I was serving on the worship team. And the whole time,
Just get a list.
I also
Yeah.
seemed perfectly happy, perfectly energized, perfectly put together. But inside I was dying. Like, I was so burnt out. But I felt like I couldn't let anyone see that side. I needed to just keep having it together, keep showing people this like perfect glassy version of me. But inside, I felt I was feeling dead. Like, I knew that I couldn't keep it up forever, but I was like, no, like, if I just keep trying, like, I'll be able to. No one has to know the truth of what's going on.
When did things start to really unravel for you?
Yeah, I feel like there were lots of little moments along the way that kind of led to the big unraveling. I think it honestly started in high school, even though obviously I didn't learn my lesson in high school because then I went on to live that college life. But in high school, kind of like in the pursuit of perfection, one of the things, I felt like I had my grades under control. I had, all that like perfect Christian girl. And I was like, okay, well, now I need to be the perfect, beautiful Christian girl. And in the process, I ended up developing an eating disorder. And it started to take control of my life. And I remember there was one time, I didn't let myself feel those negative emotions. But there was one time my senior year of high school where I was just in my room and I broke down sobbing because I knew, like, I could feel the effect that starving myself was having on my body, but I couldn't stop. It was like an obsession. It was like an addiction of like needing to have that perfect body of what I thought was going to give me the perfect body. And I broke down crying. I was like, God, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stop this. Like, please help me. And God used my mom. God used my mom to finally see what was happening. And she helped me through that. I was able to like come back from that. And I'm so thankful. Like, God totally worked in the midst of that. It was like that first moment of like, okay, there's like that crack. There's that crack in that perfect appearance. And then I went on to college. Clearly, I hadn't learned my lesson because then I'm living this crazy life. I'm doing all these things. And then on top of that, I was like, oh, it was really going to make me into the perfect adult Christian girl, having the perfect relationship, obviously. And so that became something that I became so focused on of like, okay, in order to have that perfect life that I've always dreamed of, I need to get married the summer after I graduate from college. Like, that's that perfect Christian college girl life. And so I started, trying to find somebody, and just trying to find someone to date became this huge thing for me. And in the process, I ended up going on a couple dates with someone who ended up taking advantage of me. And for me, that was like this huge moment, this huge shift of like before, if I had gotten bad marks on a test, it's like, okay, it's one test. No one has to find out about it. No one has to remember it. Like, I can, if I have 20 more perfect tests, I will never remember that one bad test. But when it came to this situation, it was like I'd lived my whole life as this perfect Christian girl in my mind, this perfect Christian girl. It had become my entire identity. And then having this part of that perfect Christian girl identity being taken from me was just this moment that kind of changed everything. And it didn't change everything right away because literally in the moment, my first instinct was no one can ever find out about this. And so I quickly got myself into a relationship that also was not healthy, also was not a good situation, but it was like something to just like make me not think about it, and just make sure that like nobody ever found out about it. Trying to like, I was officially now hiding something. I wasn't just like putting on a fake exterior, but I was truly like trying to hide something from letting anyone know. And so I didn't tell anyone. I made sure that it wasn't something that people could find out about me. And yeah, I ended up in that relationship for a year and a half. And I knew that there were things about it that weren't quite right. I knew that it wasn't the healthiest relationship. I knew it wasn't God's best for me. But I was kind of at the point of like, well, like, I don't want to have to go through all this again. No one else knows that it isn't healthy. And so I'm just going to kind of marry him. Like, this is just the relationship I'm going to be in. And
Wow.
yeah. And so that kind of became like, I tried to make that my own little version of perfect. Like, I knew it wasn't truly perfect.
But you just
But I'm
told
like,
yourself
well,
Because you were
times.
like, if I back out, then it would be a failure. So you did it basically. So you're
yeah,
like, oh,
basically I know it's not perfect, but nobody else knows it's not perfect. And so if
okay.
I just keep up the facade, obviously I am not convincing myself anymore that I'm perfect, but I can still convince everybody else that I'm perfect. Um,
Now that we've been doing this more often and just hearing people talk about their parents and then them and like hearing them tell their stories, and for me this is just the way my brain works, is I look for patterns. And like you can see like generational curses as they repeat. So
no,
like
absolutely. Like, generational cycles are so real. And they really, like, the things that your parents struggle with are often going to become the things that you struggle with. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot, actually, because I can look at my parents now that I'm older and more mature, and obviously, yes, like, they were flawed people, as everybody is, but they also did the work to break so many generational cycles. Like, addiction was a cycle on my dad's family, and he did the work to get clean and sober. And now that's not something that my sister or I have ever, like, even come close to struggling with. And that's because he broke that cycle. And I think that really breaking generational cycles is one of the beautiful acts of redemption that God does in people's lives. Because obviously, I see the way that my parents have broken those cycles. But there's even more cycles too that, like, now I can see them and I'm like, I want to be the one to break them. Like, I want to be the one to make those things happen. And so I think God just works incredibly in those areas. And so, yeah, it's cool to get to be a part of his redemptive work in that way.
it's like passing on the torch. Like if you want to put in the hard work and like, yeah, it's always easy to just do the thing that is not good for you, or just like do the lazy work, or like go back to addiction or fall into anger and act out of anger. Like it's always easier to do those things, but it's instead you can be like, okay, I saw what my parents did. Granted, like all of us have like great parents, but it's like nobody's perfect. And then like we always go like, we're not gonna be like our parents. And like now, like I myself, like gosh, I'm so much like my dad. It is crazy.
No, it's we all, whether we want to or not, we are always going to become somewhat similar to our parents. And so it's like, I feel like as you enter adulthood, and us kind of in our mid-20s now, of like really starting to look forward to like, one day I'm going to be married, one day I'm going to have kids. How do I want to be like my parents? What do I want to take from my parents? And what do I want to actively start doing the work now to be different from my parents? What do I want to implement one day in my home that is like my parents or different from my parents? Like, those are important things to do in the stage of our lives, of do that work.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to laugh earlier. So, you were in this relationship, and then you were like, anyways. So then you're like, oh, well, we should get married, basically. What happened from there? What turned things
God.
around? Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
this was
Were you like down on one knee like proposing to him, and then like
No.
a bird like came by and like
I
flew
would
and took the
never.
ring?
Oh my gosh.
And,
No,
and
I feel
Kayla
like-
is all like, I guess that's a sign, and like closes it and just like walks away and never talked to him again. That's how I envision it happening. But how did it actually happen?
Yeah, I feel like I've always said that God guides me in baby steps. And I would say that for almost every area of my life, that has been very true. Of like, God will give me like the next step. Instead of telling me where he's going to take me, he just gives me the next step. And I like await further instructions. And then it's like, okay, then he'll tell me the next thing when it's time. This was the one time where like God just like grabbed me and like didn't care if I was kicking or screaming. He's just like, whoop, get you out of there. And so I don't know why that was the illustration I used. He's like, I'm getting you out of here. Come on. You're coming with me whether you want to or not. And it was like this wake up call. I was on this retreat, and all of a sudden, like it was like all the pieces throughout the retreat, like all the pieces have started coming together of like kind of seeing how all this view that I had of this relationship, like all these different things that had happened, how it was all creating this puzzle. And I was starting to see things clearly for the first time of like, oh, this isn't what God's best is for me. And I all of a sudden like felt God so closely and so heavily put on me, like, you have to get out. Like, I have something better for you and you need to trust me. Like, you need to just do it. It wasn't like this one baby step. It was the biggest step of my life. I felt like I had it all written. I felt like the rest of my life was written out, and I wanted it that way. I wanted to have it all planned out.
You wanted to be the author of your own story?
I wanted to write my story, and I wanted to, like, I thought this was, like, the perfect little life, once again, that I was going to create for everyone to see. And
she was like, White House, picket white fence, 2 kids.
Absolutely. Literally had it all planned out. And then all of a sudden, God was just like, nope. Do you trust me? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I trust you. And it was like this moment of, am I really going to trust God? Or am I going to trust myself? And it was this moment of really having to make that step of faith. Like I said, most of my life had been baby steps. And now it's time for the leap. It's time to make that decision that I knew was going to change the rest of my life. And for me, like, you probably have already figured it out with all the perfectionism, but like having my life planned out was a very high value to me. Like you were talking about earlier about yourself, like having it all planned out, I had the whole plan. I knew, or I felt like I knew what the rest of my life was going to look like. And I liked it that way. It felt safe. And I'm like, whoa, I'm not a risk taker. Like I'm a rule follower. I keep it together. I don't do anything crazy. Like I play it safe. And God was asking me to do the scariest thing I'd ever done in my life. And I just kept praying about it, and I kept feeling heavier and heavier and heavier. Like, you have to do this. And there was this one moment where I was like, okay, God, like, you're going to take the wheel because I don't know what's happening. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I need you to do it. And so I got back from the retreat, immediately called my boyfriend up, broke up with him on the spot.
On the phone, too.
No, not...
Wasted no time.
Wow.
No, called him to come meet me.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Called him to come meet me. We broke up on the spot. And it was like this ultimate, like, I have no idea what's next. I have no idea what my life looks like now. Like, I had everything down to the month. And it was like, and now there's just a huge question mark. And I have no idea what's coming. And I wasn't excited. No, I was terrified. And as like the weeks rolled by, there's this, not a sense of doom, because I had a peace about it. I had a peace about it the whole time, and I knew it was from God. But this sense of like finally starting to feel those negative emotions that I'd been hiding for years. Finally starting to really think about the impact that all those things had had on me, and realizing that like these were things that I was going to have to be willing to share with people moving forward. These are things that I'm going to have to be open about. These are the things that like I'll have to disclose when it comes to future relationships one day. This is something that like I have to be honest about, be vulnerable about. And vulnerability had been the thing that I'd been avoiding my whole life. Like, I didn't want to be vulnerable. I wanted to keep up this perfect wall. But in that time, God was with me closer than he had ever been before. He was right there holding my hand through all of it. I honestly say more of the time, like, it wasn't even holding my hand. He was just like full on carrying me, like Princess Carrie. Like, I'm just sitting there and he's doing it all himself.
Which is how it's supposed to be, too.
Oh my gosh, literally. And that totally brings me to that whole, like I said, my whole life, it was, I don't want anyone to have to worry about me. Like, I am my independent self. No one has to worry about me. No one has to think twice about me. I've got it under control. Don't worry about it. And it's this moment of like, oh my gosh, I don't have anything under control. Like, I have no idea what's coming. I have no idea how to handle any of these negative emotions I'm feeling for the first time in my life. God, I need you. Like, I need you so much. And it was like the first time in my life where I felt true dependence. I remember even from a young age, like, I literally remember this one specific image of me at the pool. And, I was taking swim lessons and they would like have you jump into the pool and it's like the lifeguard's there ready to catch you. And I wouldn't trust the lifeguard. And then my parents would get in the water, wouldn't trust my parents. Like, I would not jump in because I didn't trust that anyone was going to hold me up. Like, I felt like the only person I could trust was myself. From even like that young of an age. And it was all of a sudden this moment of like, oh wow, like, I was never meant to just trust myself. I was never meant to just depend on myself. Like, the whole purpose of the Christian life is dependence on God. I'm not supposed to do it on my own. I'm not supposed to have it all together. Like, the whole point is that I don't. The whole point is that I am a mess. And that's why I need God. That's why what God did is so amazing. Here, I'm going to pull out a Bible verse, one of my favorite Bible verses, and it was actually in my Bible reading plan this morning. So obviously, God had it on my heart. God wanted me to share it. But it's one of my favorites right now. It's 2 Corinthians 12:9. But he, God, said to me, this is Paul talking, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. And the fact that that's my favorite verse is, that in itself is a miracle. Because that's the exact opposite of how I live my life. Like, it was the exact opposite of nobody knows I have weaknesses. I'll rely on my strengths. I will be perfect. I will have it all together. I am the strong one that no one has to worry about. And now, like, the fact that that is one of my theme verses is redemption right there. Of the fact that God has brought me from that place of feeling like I had to rely on myself to now being able to say, like, no, the fact that I don't have it all together, the fact that I have flaws, the fact that I fail, those show that it's God. Like, God is the amazing one. It's not me. It was never meant to be me. I'm not meant to be the perfect Christian girl. There is no such thing. Like, Jesus is the perfect guy who took my place on the cross. He was the perfect sacrifice that I could never be. And now when God looks at me, he doesn't want to just see this perfect Christian girl. He wants to see the real me, but more than that, he sees his perfect son, whose blood was shed for me, who took that place for me. And so I don't have to be perfect. And there's that freedom that I experienced for the first time in my life. This feeling of, I am not perfect. Obviously, I want to become more and more like Jesus. Like, I want to sin less. I want to have, like, less failures, less slip-ups. But I can also live in freedom, knowing that I was never meant to be perfect. And I don't have to try to put all that pressure on myself. Because Jesus already did it all for me.
I can relate so heavily with everything with perfectionism. Like, I told you this, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm sure you can. Because, yeah, nobody looks at me now and, like, thinks perfectionist. I've become way more relaxed than I used to be. Because, like, yeah, for me, it was just so draining. My standards of perfection were not nearly as high as yours. But it's just funny, because, like, yeah, as I've gotten to know God more, it's realizing, like, wow, yeah, the exact same, like, I am the same sinner I was yesterday, before I knew God, before I even wanted to have a relationship with him. I'm that exact same sinner. Like, nothing has changed other than I've decided that I've given my life to him now, and I need help. Like that was the exact same thing Reggie told me. He's like, you've been trying life your way, because I was like, oh, I'm big and tough. Like I can handle every single problem life throws at me. Meanwhile, I'm like drowning deep down, and I'm like, I literally don't think I can handle one more thing. But like, I'd lie to myself and be like, you have to do this, otherwise, like, you're gonna be a failure. Like that was a lot for me. Is like, I have to keep going, otherwise, I'm gonna be a failure. So it was like, what am I gonna do? Like drown, or am I gonna like literally keep fighting until I drown and like I'm pulled all the way under? Which is what happened. And that's when Reggie was like, like, dude, like, there's a way easier way to do all this, by the way. And I was like, yeah, no, there's not. And then he's like, no, there is. And I'm like, no. And he's like, yeah, you should try it. And I was like, okay, fine. And that's when it was like, yeah, veil is torn, and it's like, wow, there actually is way easier way to do this. And something I've been like fixating on, but like just reading through the Old Testament, and like how many times like it says like they were, Joseph or Abraham, and it was like they were seen as righteous men before God's eyes. And exactly how you said, like when God looks at us, like when we've invited him into our life and our heart, he doesn't just see us. Like he sees Jesus standing in front of us, and he says, you are righteous in front of my eyes. Yeah. You are completely blameless in front of my eyes, which is like God, the one who created us, sees us as a perfect being because of Jesus dying on the cross for us. Like we see ourselves as these broken people, like literally couldn't even walk out the front door and live a perfect life. Like there's literally nothing we could do right. But then God, the one who literally created us, loves us so much that he sent down his son, that he says, you know what? I see you as absolutely perfect. There is nothing wrong with you, without blame, and I see you as righteous and holy when you give your life to God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how beautiful is that? And like it's something like I think about all the time, because it's like, what does it mean to be like a righteous man? Like how does God see you as a righteous man living? Like especially just me as like a man, like I really do want to live as a good Christian man and push myself. Now that's my new fixation of like, okay, how do I do that? Yeah. And at some point I'll really understand it, that it's not something I can do. But now it's still like there's like little things I like to be like, oh, well, what if I do this? Like maybe I can get like a little extra mark. Hasn't fully clicked, but it's definitely been revealed to me that it's like, yeah, just because I'm Christian now doesn't mean like I can obtain the righteousness. Like it's literally, it's already given to me.
Exactly. And I think, one of the things we've been talking about at college group, I feel like pretty often recently, is just that idea that like, God takes your sins and they're thrown like as far as the east is from the west. Like they're in the depths of the ocean. And I think it's our human nature, especially for people like you and me who have that perfectionism, to still hyperfixate on all those mistakes, still hyperfixate on those sins, to think back to the ones that we've committed in the past too. And let that little shame like sneak back into our lives. And I think one of the things that God showed me so much in that time post breakup, and he still has to bring it back into my life all the time, of just that idea of, Kayla, you know that I've forgiven you. Who are you to not forgive yourself? Like, you're not better than me. Like, you know this now. Like, if I can forgive you, if I'm the God of the entire universe who created the law, and I can forgive you, then you need to forgive yourself. And I think learning that it doesn't always come easily.
No, it's like a journey,
Absolutely.
It's continuous. But when you said God asked you, when you were at that retreat, do you trust me? That reminded me of a story that my dad likes to tell, which is when my mom had cancer, and he was wrestling with God, and it was, maybe the hardest thing he's ever gone through in his walk with God. And he was taking the trash out, and he was taking it up the stairs, and, he talks about he felt God. And he felt God ask him that same exact question. Do you trust me? And my dad's just like, yes, I trust you. And he's like, and then God said another thing like, have I ever failed you? He's like, no, you've never failed me. He's like, trust me now. And that's all he said. And then that's what got him through that. But that's always what it comes back to. And my experience as well is like, okay, I'm not trusting God now. And that's one of the first things like I try to look for when I'm just not walking with God, or I feel like I know something's not right in my life, and then I realize that, okay, well, there's not a dependence there. And then, I'm trying to do it by myself, which
no, I wish I could say that I'm like, oh my gosh, ever since that moment years ago, I just trust God perfectly all the time. No, not true at all. I still try to take that pen back all the time. And in those moments, I just have to remind myself, like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Well, it's also like interesting because, I mean, it's kind of a gift in a way because we have that free will, you know, to even be able to do that. But then it's also when we start using it to our detriment is when it hurts us.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like, okay.
Yeah.
But I had a question. When you were searching or striving for perfectionism growing up, is there something that you wish someone had said to you during that time?
You know, I feel like I was so down that path. Like, I knew it all. Like, I lived my life in church. Like, I had heard the whole, like, you don't need to be perfect. You are a sinner. God has forgiven you. Like, I knew it all. And yet I didn't let any of it sink in. And so I don't know if there's, like, one thing that if someone would have said to me, it would have just hit me and changed the trajectory of my life.
It would have just
but I
washed
think,
right off you.
I think one of the things that I just needed to, or that I would go back and tell myself is like, hey, you don't need to be perfect, which once again, I don't know how much I would have listened to that, but God wants you to be you. He sees you right where you are, and just be authentic. Be your real self. If I could go back to myself, I had a time machine, and I could just go back to myself, I think I would just tell myself that every emotion was created by God. Every emotion was designed by God for a reason, and they're a gift for us. And so when you feel those so-called negative emotions, when you feel sad, when you feel angry, when you feel disappointed, whether it be in yourself or in other people or in your situation, know that there's a reason for that, and you can feel that. You can let yourself feel that, because God didn't design you to try to fit this perfect box. God designed you as you are. And so be who you are supposed to be. Don't try to be what people want you to be. Like, be who you are and seek to serve God as you do that. Seek to live your life for Him as you do that.
I think that's something I'm starting to realize too. I mean, I don't really know the Bible that well, but I'm learning it. But I think, you know, the Bible talks a lot about the Pharisees and just like a lot about like yourself. Like, it's like knowing, I think, is so much different than applying it to your life. Like, you can have
so different.
All the knowledge of the Bible. You can know every verse, everything that it has to say. But if you're not actively applying its principles to your life, then it's like, you know, faith without works is dead. Like, all that knowledge without any action is like, okay, it's like I could know every times table in my head or know exactly how to make $1 million if I had like a concrete plan to create, like, follow these steps A through B and like, or A through, we'll say D, and like you'll get $1 million, and like I give that to everybody. But if nobody actually applies those principles, nobody's gonna have $1 million. And it's exactly the same with the Bible.
Yeah, I absolutely think that, you know, I feel like a thing that I heard all the time is that you could live your whole life in church. You could go to church every day. Like, you can read your Bible every day. You can pray. You can do everything to seem perfect. But you could miss it all by 12 inches. And what that means is just like that distance from your head to your heart. That difference from your brain to your heart.
Oh, I like that.
Wow.
If it all just stays here, then you missed it by 12 inches. Like, you missed the whole point.
It's really good.
If it stays up there. That's shout out to, I don't know, someone who said that to me growing up.
Nice.
So shout out to whoever you are out there. No, it's so true. And I think I lived kind of that like legalistic Pharisee life in a sense. For me, it was always, well, as long as I have all the perfect actions, then I am the perfect Christian girl. But the whole time I was relying on myself, which is the exact opposite of what faith actually is. Like, I didn't ever have that trust, which is literally called faith. Like, how can I not have that and say I have faith? And so, yeah, I was just living it all upside down.
Yeah.
It's funny too to like see like how you still have some of those like rule following tendencies, and now like I just make fun of you for it.
Oh yeah.
But like it was funny to me. I mean, it's funny now. It probably wasn't that funny in the moment. But like when we were in Mexico and I was going to get the freaking stucco, and like I stuck it in the bucket and I like scraped it super bad and it like flung in my face, and I was like said a not very nice word, and you were like, "Hey," and like I was just. I forgot exactly what you said, but you were like not happy. Like your tone and everything was like, no, like none of that. And I was just like scraping stucco out of my eye. I was just like, okay, Mom. Like, I literally like didn't do it intentionally. Like,
No, I cannot say that I do it all correctly all the time now. Well, see, the whole point is not doing it all correctly all the time now. I cannot say that I've strayed from my perfectionistic ways.
Yeah.
They still come up all the time. I still like, and I think that part of that is how like God designed me to be someone who cares about the rules, who cares about what's right. And I think that those are good qualities that I have just hyperfixated on in my life and turned into an obsession, turned into an addiction.
yeah.
But I think so often, yeah, and I mean that could take us into a whole other thing about how a good thing, when given too much of our focus, can become a bad thing, which can really take us down a whole
Oh my gosh,
road.
yeah.
We could
I mean,
be podcasting forever.
Even just talking about focus. Like the word focus, oh my gosh. I was just listening to a sermon on the drive down here on like the whole series of like focus and like how that's like normally seen as like a negative connotation. Like you gotta focus, or you're like, you know, you gotta focus while you're in school, you gotta focus while you're doing your work, you gotta focus, you know? It's never like, nobody hears the word focus. Like I hear it and I'm like, okay, that means I gotta like work harder now.
Lock
Yeah,
in.
it's a word I tell my middle schoolers
Yeah,
all the
it's
time,
never like,
you know?
you know, and it's like sometimes like that can be seen as like our walk with God. Like goes right into like the whole perfectionism of like, okay, it's not like we walk into God's house and it's not like, all right, when God welcomes us in, it's like we have to go straight to reading the Bible and straight to praying, and like as long as we do that every day, like we go to spend time with Him, like we have to focus, you know. And it's like, no, there's not like there's set of agreements that we like to make for ourselves, like to be in God's presence. It's not like we have to focus and do these things and like go through A through C and like do all these certain things and then God will grace us with His presence. It's not like we have to do all these things. And it's like so easy to get stuck in that. Like, yeah, of course those are great practices to have and you should try and implement them into your life, but it's not like it's a to-do list. God can meet you anywhere you're at. It's not like, okay, I have to open my Bible, I have to tell Reggie about God today and let him know that God loves him. And I gotta pray, and then I gotta, you know, thank God for the food He's made for my table. And then after I do those 5 things, then when I pray to God and ask Him for things like, oh, I'm gonna feel like the presence of God, or when I go to worship on Sunday, like I'm gonna feel God's presence because I did all these things. And it just talks about how like we can focus on all of those things as Christians that we have to do or feel like we have to do. And then it's once again, you completely miss the point because your focus is completely wrong.
Yep.
Well, then it starts to become a burden, you know, instead of a joy. Like, it just gets heavy.
That's where it becomes religion.
Yeah.
And not like a faith.
A relationship.
A relationship, yeah. Yeah, just to like kind of wrap things up.
I say that, not you. So just kind of to wrap things up.
Nice. Okay.
But obviously, you know, most of the stuff that I am talking about happened years ago. And so obviously I have learned and grown and God has shown me all this stuff. But I think what I just want to highlight as we get to the end of this is just that, you know, it's been a few years now. I'm still very young, like I'm 24. It's not like I have it all figured out. Like I'm not married. I don't have kids. I still don't have a plan. Like I still don't have that perfect plan of what my life looks like. But God does. And I think just getting to now live in that freedom of not knowing what's next, it's a gift. And I think on top of that is just where I am now just shows the redemptive work of God. Of not only the fact that I can live now without constantly worrying about what's next, but also just the fact that the life that I have now is already so much better than that whole plan was. Like I had my whole life planned out. And now we're only a few years down the road. I still haven't done most of those things that were like the big parts of my plan. And yet now my life has already been so much better than I could have imagined. I'm the middle school director at my church, and I never would have expected myself to get into that job, and it is my dream job. Like, I love it. I get to spend my whole life teaching those little kids who I was all those years ago, teaching them about the truth of Jesus, showing them the redemption that they can have through God. And that alone is just like a crazy redemption. I have all of these friends, I have all these people in my life who are constantly showing me God's love, who are constantly showing me that, you know, they don't love me, or they're not proud of me, or they don't value me because of what I can do. No one once in the last 4 years of my life since I graduated college has asked me for my GPA or my SAT scores and been like, okay, that means that you're valuable.
Yeah,
like,
now you can be my friend.
Yeah. No one cares how many hours I worked in college or how much I have saved in my bank account or anything like that. Like, I have so many people around me now who love me and who encourage me and want to bring out those good qualities in me, and who allow me to feel those negative emotions, who allow me to be my vulnerable self, which means that I'm going to mess up sometimes, and sometimes they have to forgive me. Like, I'm not perfect, and they've shown me so much grace. And so the life that I'm already living is just so much better than anything I could have imagined. And it's all just such a testament to how God redeems everything. And so trusting him in that moment, like that question of, do you trust me? It changed the course of my life. And so much of it is still left to be seen. As Natasha Bedingfield puts it, the rest is still unwritten. Well, it's actually written by God. It's written by God. But I will discover it as I walk in his ways and as I trust him. And I am just so thankful to have him, because he's the best friend in the whole world.
So, last question. What advice would you give someone who doesn't know Jesus and is searching, curious about?
Yeah. If you are already kind of in that place where you're questioning, you're thinking about it, you're not sure about it. First off, I would say, keep doing the research. Keep leaning into it. Keep asking questions. Find the right people in your life to keep asking those questions to. But if you get to that point where it's like, I just have to make a decision, if you make that decision, it's going to be the best one you can ever make. Just like God asked me, do you trust me? You're going to get to that point too. You're going to get to that place where you just have to decide, do you trust the Bible? Do you trust what God has said? Do you trust that there is a God? Or are you going to choose your own way? And so when that moment comes, when he asks, do you trust me? Please take that leap of faith, because you have no clue. I have no clue what God can do once you make that choice. Make the scary choice. Do the scary thing and just see what can happen.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kayla,
awesome.
so much for coming on again.
Yes.
That's going to wrap it up for episode number 7, guys. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe or just send it to anybody who might like this word of encouragement. Thank you, guys.